Well, welcome and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you are in the world. My name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic. This call is being recorded. Please join me in prayer for spiritual intervention, an open mind and an open heart. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps in you, for an open mind and a new experience of myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. We've completed the rocket launch. Stage one, getting off the ground. Well, getting into the rocket, actually, and having the rocket blast off with an experience of deep despair, looking at, or again looking at, reflecting on our history of addiction, certainly, and in some cases, that's still relevant. In many of your cases, addiction's not been a problem for weeks, months, or years even. But we were introduced to the dark, dark area of bedevilments. The area that Bill says, as we enter into step 10, we're not cured of, unmanageability, the spiritual malady, and that we have a daily reprieve. So we need power, and that's our effort. That's our hope, actually, in steps 2 and 3. A decision that just has no substance to it in step 2, other than the substance we bring to it as faith. A decision in step 3 for a relationship with that power. Again, there's no substance. There's no certitude. There's no feeling. There's no knowledge. There's this hope, a very faint glimmer of light. Mostly coming from other people's witness to the experience. Trust the process. Trust the big book. Trust the community. And then we proceed as a deep dive into stage 2, a very analytical process. A lot of head work, some heart work, but mostly head work. Looking at our history, looking at our motives, looking at our beliefs, looking at our values, looking at our experiences. And then opening up the books to somebody and reading it all. Warts, depravities, darkness. We're really swimming in the sewer for months. Step 4 and 5. And then we begin to, I believe, get some freedom with the confession, but certainly, again, with some more hope in stage 2, at the end of stage 2, looking at step 6, an inventory of our unhealthy coping strategies. That's what the psychologists call it today. Character defects. Dr. Berker calls them character defaults. Defaults, much better term. It's a default survival position. It's what we know. It's our habits. Unhealthy as they are, they're the only ones that we know. They don't work, but we want them to. And we believe if we try harder, they will. And that's part of the delusion, again, that we confront. Seeing that we're positively powerless. And we pray, my Creator, for the change that we cannot induce on our own power. And we go into that third stage, the final stage of the rehabilitation of our partnership relationships. Partnership with our special person, partnership with our families, partnership with our work environment, partnership with our communities and our fellowship. That's the word Bill uses in the 12 and 12, that addicts, alcoholics have a very difficult time establishing effective, successful, satisfying partnerships. I love it. I just read it over the weekend. Failed partnerships. Wasn't ever actually my goal to have partnership. I was so self-reliant. I didn't think I needed partners of any kind. And the ninth step is a rehabilitation of those relationships to the extent that we want them to be present in our lives, or at least repaired the damage in a balance of scale from a justice standpoint. And we've gone over the ninth step process. It's a practice that you get better at, and that's why I suggest that in the ninth step we begin with the easiest ones. It's a process of forgiveness, and I've mentioned that so many times in our work. Forgiveness with the hand gesture, as I looked up the word in a dictionary. The hand gesture. Forgiveness, a decision to release. It begins in step 4. It begins in the third and fourth column when we, in fact, are released ourselves from our delusion of our beliefs, our delusion about our motives, third and fourth column, respectively. We are released. And then we begin to see, because that's the way I constructed the fourth column resentment worksheet, we begin to see the damage that we've done by our resentments, at the very least, by our delusions and our corrupt motives at the very most. We park it in questions 6 and 7 on that fourth column worksheet. But then we come back in the sixth step and we do inventory on our defects, our behavior that comes out of our survival instincts, those unhealthy coping strategies, those default mechanisms. And then we do an inventory on our eighth step of the damage that all of that corruption and those instincts gone awry creates in our lives and other people's lives. And we see steps 4 through 9 as really bringing us deeper into the darkness of step 1. Under each one of the steps is a revelation of powerlessness. Under each step is the revelation of the powerlessness of step 1. I don't have the power to name God adequately. I don't have the power to have a relationship with God effectively. I don't have the power to even see, let alone get rid of my resentments and my fear and my sex and my dishonesty. And Bill suggests prayer in every one of those. And on in each step, powerlessness and the solution be prayer. Not in any namby-pamby fantasy, magic Disney dust. No. A confrontation of the truth. In objective reality, talking to somebody about it. A sponsor, a step guide, a therapist, a good friend, a partner, Doesn't make any difference who you're talking to, as long as you're talking to somebody other than yourself, because I cannot be objective. And then taking the actions of step 9, as little as they might be, tiny little things, or as very large things, sometimes huge, that need guidance from professionals, therapists and psychiatrists, lawyers and accountants, insurance adjusters, and wisdom people for sure, maybe some ordained cleric. We need to get guidance from experienced people in the substantial areas where we are going to make an amend, especially if it's family members, especially if it's close relationships, current partners, ex-partners, even though you're not looking for reconciliation in the sense of a rebuilding of the relationship, especially with ex-partners, but you want some peace in it. Theirs, and that's the primary, we saw that, page 77, I think it is, that it's not about us. Step 9, it's not about us. It's about bringing healing to other people with the promise that it will bring healing to us, that paradox. On page 38 through 40, I've got a forgiveness meditation. It's very dense. It's not just something you read and go like, oh yeah, that was interesting. I get it. No, this is very dense. It's a distillation of the forgiveness process, which I see as steps 4 through 9. It begins in step 4. I do believe that after you finish the 9th step, you have an experience of forgiveness, an experience. You still may not be able to articulate what you experienced. And that's why I put the words together here. It's a dense explanation, acknowledgement of my understanding of the 4 through 9 process and my experience of it. And later on, I became acquainted with a book which I've touted very highly here in the workshop, On Forgiveness, by a clinical psychologist, Fred Luskin. Forgive for Good. And I've incorporated, actually, later on, probably about 5 years ago. I wrote the meditation about 30 years ago. It stood the test of time, but I added Fred Luskin's stages to it because I think it marks the particular 5 or 6 or 7 particular stages or phases that we go through, that we experience in this forgiveness methodology. If you have it there, you're welcome to look at it. I'm going to comment on it just a little bit, not a lot. I have done a 3-hour workshop on forgiveness. It's on YouTube. And if you're interested in more information and more unpacking, more examples, more a depth and breadth of explanation, certainly do that. It was done last year, I believe. And it includes my PowerPoint. So it's my current reflections on forgiveness. But as I say very clearly in the Way of Life document, it's a process, not an event. It might take weeks, months, years, actually. My wife was able to at least express that she released me and trusted me. Her word was trust, after about 5 years. We didn't speak about much in the negative sense and the history. During that 5 years, we just operated on a daily basis. You've heard some of the material, the substance, the actions that we took as I expressed my approach to both step 4 and steps 8 and 9. But that's the kind of healing that can take place, miracle stuff. As I say in that meditation, it's really a meditation more than it is an essay on forgiveness in the Way of Life document. Forgiveness is not to condone, or certainly not to forget or approve and all the other words that are there. And that's not the point of forgiveness. It's to release them. Just a decision to release them. And it's not easy. Simple. It sounds simple. Oh, just release them. Well, yeah, that's not quite that simple. That's why we pray about it, for their healing and my healing. First, we have to, as I say at the bottom, we have to name it. That's Fred Luskin's words. We accept the facts. It did happen. There was awful behavior from our parents, one or the other or both, or our family of origin. Oh, chaotic cauldron of darkness in many, many homes that imprinted us permanently, some things we will never recover from. It's tragic. It's unfortunate. In some cases, it's even criminal. It's true. It did happen. That's the thing we have to say. We'll never have a better family. We'll never have a better childhood. We'll never have a better history. Deal with it. This is about growing up. This is about being an adult. This is about saying, yeah, it was awful. Was is the operative word. Was is the operative word. And we need to release it, not to forget it. There are some things that we need to remember, but not to swim in the cesspool of negativity. It did happen. I was hurt. And then on the next page, and of course, this is a recap of steps 4 through 9. I want to keep you in that context, is to understand it. Part of the column 3 and column 4's benefit, that analytical process we went grindingly through. Oh my God, it was so difficult at some points, is to understand the analysis of our values and our beliefs and to see the distortions and the delusions that we have. And then to identify, and this clearly is Fred Luskin's words here, identify my unenforceable rules. What a great phrase. These are my beliefs. Parents should, sisters should, partners should. Really? Who wrote that script? Well, that was my fairy tale about life. And I'm using the word very carefully. Fairy tale, a fantasy. We can explain where it comes from, but most of us don't know that it's a fairy tale. We actually believe the movie script that we wrote is reality. And when it doesn't live up to our expectations, we get depressed or we get angry or we get fearful or whatever our reaction is. Unenforceable rules. See, reality doesn't respond to my rules. I need to respond to reality's rules. That's the turnaround. Reality doesn't adjust to me. I need to adjust to reality. That's why I'm talking about it right here as we enter into the world of the spirit, the world of 10th step. 10th step is all about being disturbed. And Bill says when they crop up, he doesn't say if they crop up in step 10 in the big book. We don't overcome or transcend our humanity. We're always going to be human, and we're always going to be disappointed with life because we have expectations. Those unenforceable rules. It's not a bad thing. It's just not very helpful when we get too attached to our expectations. So the next item is to acknowledge reality. I'm on a crusade, actually. Probably you'd call it that, because I've been involved with emotional sobriety now with Dr. Berger for the last 20 years. And the momentum is building in my own sense of urgency, because it's the source of suffering. The source of suffering for most human beings is they don't accept reality. They don't know they don't accept reality. But that's really the source of the problem. I mean, you hear people say who are emotionally sensible or spiritually evolved, go with the flow. Well, that is the heart of it. I don't mean roll over. I don't mean passive. I don't mean like putting up with unacceptable. No, not at all. But go with the flow is reality's in evolution. It's happening right now. Your heart's beating, your blood is circulating, the sun is rising, the sun is setting. It's happening right now. Mountains are deteriorating, volcanoes are building energy right now as we talk. Evolution, lions are eating deer right now. The world is in evolution. I am in evolution. Acknowledge reality. Well, oh, that's the Serenity Prayer. You've heard me say it a dozen times a day. The Serenity Prayer. What can I influence? What can't I influence? That's the Serenity Prayer. Not much is the answer. Very little outside of me. Some inside of me. Dr. Berger has a great phrase. Don't take anything outside of you personal. It's not personal. It's just happening. Take everything inside of you personal. Wonderful. Again, don't be black and white about it, but it's a wonderful reflection. Outside of me, don't take it personal. It's not personal. It's just happening. Inside of me, it's very personal. A lot of it's my decision and some of it's not. And then after you accept reality, accept the responsibility for your reaction to reality. Well, wasn't that the major spiritual awakening for most of us in column 4? The bottom line on column 4 is I am responsible. Bill said it on page 62. Our troubles are of our own making. It's the same thing. Circumstances and people are not the problem. The problem is my reaction to circumstances and people. I need to accept responsibility for my thoughts. How I think is my responsibility. For my feelings. How I feel is my responsibility. How I behave. How my feet move. That's my responsibility. What I say. That's my responsibility. So with the best intentions and the clearest consciousness, I inform myself of the current circumstances. I get knowledge of whatever the current reality is to the best of my ability. Then I make a decision and then I take action. And I'm responsible to make that decision. And not making a decision is a decision to not make a decision. We're always making decisions because that's in our nature. That is what defines us as human beings, the ability, the free will ability to make decisions and then to implement those decisions by taking action. That's why the end of the step 11 prayer is so powerful in the acknowledgement not only of reality, but of the human reality. Listen to it again. I've said it many times. I'm in the last year been very impressed with the accuracy of the end of the 11th step itself, the step. Praying for the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. I need to know what to do. Usually first, I need to know what to do and then do it. But I need power to know accurately. As we've seen in Technicolor, as we've done steps 4 through 9. And then I need the power to be able to do that. The two things that make us specifically human, our mind and our will, are flawed. On our own power, we won't know accurately. On our own power, we won't do what we know is the principled thing to do. And I use that word very carefully, principled thing to do. If we learn anything, the 12th step tells us, practice these principles in all our affairs. That's not a throwaway line. That's precision with regard to how to live a happy life, literally a happy life. Find out what the principle is and do it. I take it a step further with my sponsees because they're knuckleheads. None of you are my sponsees, so I'm not. But I love them all. But I say, find out what the principle is. Identify what the principle is, and then always take the high road. Be generous with reality. You cannot outdo God. I mean, I operate on that basis as if it's true. It's never failed me. I have no idea if it's based in reality or not. I mean, does God exist? I really don't know. What I do know is when I operate as if God exists, my life is better. So why would I change that? See, that's faith. There's no knowledge there. There's no certitude there. There's no feeling there. We did this in step 2. Faith, empty, dark, non-substantial. And yet, as Father Rohr said, faith is the acceptance of that for which there is no evidence. And once we accept it, the evidence appears. Well, I look over my shoulder, and at least my interpretation of the evidence, my journey, is that everything I've believed has helped me live a life that flourishes. And so I'm going to end with this, and I may have done it before, but it's worth doing again, especially in the context of this discussion. A good friend of mine, Dan Sherman, laid out the bedevilments from page 52 at the beginning of step 1, at the end of step 1, with the promises at the end of the step 9 process. And he laid them out. I have his diagram on page 41 in the Way of Life document. Bedevilment. We are having trouble with personal relationships. Promise. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellow. Self-seeking will slip away. Bedevilment. We couldn't control our emotional natures. Promise. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. Bedevilment. We were prey to misery and depression. Promise. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Bedevilment. We couldn't make a living. Promise. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. Bedevilment. We had a feeling of uselessness. Promise. The feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Bedevilment. We were full of fear. Promise. We will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. Bedevilment. We were unhappy. Promise. We're going to know a new happiness and a new freedom. Bedevilment. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Promise. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. And then the conclusion. Most of all, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. That's the definition of a spiritual awakening that we looked at the very beginning of the workshop 12 months ago. Appendix 2. A spiritual awakening is a change in the way we think and feel and behave, and it's done to us, not by us, but not without us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves, but we also realize that there's an awful lot of responsibility that we have, not the least of which is to show up. Step 10 is paying attention. As simple as that. Pay attention during the day, as the step 10 says in the 12 and 12. It's a spiritual axiom. Whenever we're disturbed, there's something wrong with us. It's that clear. It's always going to be me if I'm disturbed. It's never, it's never going to be them. Oh, they do stuff. People and circumstances. Sometimes ugly, sometimes hurtful, sometimes just really unfortunate, sometimes criminal and tragic. Absolutely. And it does impact us, but it's our reaction to it that is the problem. We need to learn how to navigate the white water of the flow. Life is in flow. Sometimes it's gentle stream, and sometimes it's boulders and intensity. And we need to navigate the flow. And that's what step 10 is. Bill calls it a spot check inventory in the 12 and 12, which so accurately helps us name step 10. On the spot check inventory, on the spot. When I'm disturbed, I use this tool in the same way I'd use my cell phone. The cell phone rings and I answer it mostly. All right? I'm disturbed, and my first impulse now is, okay, how am I out of alignment with the flow of the universe, with the flow of reality? How am I out of alignment? Remember step 3? Going across purposes of the flow and to be in alignment with the flow. When I'm out of alignment, I'll be disturbed. When I'm in alignment, I'm in the flow. Oh, it may be fast or it may be slow, but I'm in the flow. And on page 43 in the Way of Life document, I outline summarize the 4 steps, the 4 pieces of the formula, the method for being placed back in alignment. It's a recap of steps 1 through 9. We pray because we're powerless. We discuss it with somebody because we're human. We make an amend if we've created any damage. And we turn our thoughts to helping somebody else. Brilliant on Bill's part. He doesn't actually say that we stop what we're doing during the day to help somebody. Nope. He understands that there's responsibilities at work or in family or some other place. We don't stop what we're doing in order to help somebody, but we stop and we think, how can I help somebody at some point during this day? He said, we think about how can we help somebody. He doesn't say we actually help somebody. Brilliant. One of the items in that step 10 list as the opposite of resentment is forgiveness. And that's why I like to bring in that whole concept of forgiveness as a discussion for us at this point. We enter the world of the spirit. We've been placed in a position of neutrality with regard to our addiction, but we're not cured. Not cured of our unmanageability, not cured of our selfishness, self-centeredness, not cured of our spiritual malady. That's what he's meaning there, I believe. And we have a daily reprieve. In the big book, he says about those promises that we read in contrast to the bedevilments. On page 84. Are these extravagant promises? No, they're not. paraphrasing. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Listen to this line at the beginning of step 10. They will always materialize if we work for them. This isn't magic fairy dust. This is spiritual work. What's the spiritual work? This brings us to step 10. And then he says, we vigorously commence this way of living as we clean up the past. As we're doing step 9, vigorously commence this way of living. Oh, that's not just step 10. He's introducing us to step 11 and 12 also. Oh, this is the work. This is the spiritual work. The program of recovery are steps 1 through 9. That's work enough, and that'll get us the spiritual awakening. That's the promise. But if we want to keep it, we work every day. We're not cured, a daily reprieve. Every day we stay gently pressed up against that dimmer switch. That's my image, which gives us such a sense of peace and gentleness. Gentleness. There's no violence here in the spiritual life. No violence. A lot of work. A lot of suffering even. But gentle. We stay gently pressed up against the dimmer switch because it has a tendency to go backwards. Dr. Tebow said, Bill got it right. The first 9 steps are for the deflation of the ego at depth. But the ego has an uncanny way of regenerating itself. And Bill said, daily reprieve, we're not cured. That dimmer switch, figuratively speaking, poetically speaking, is wired to go backwards. Unless we stay gently pressed up against that dimmer switch with our shoulder, it will go backwards. And if we want it to go forward, we need to push a little bit. Exert our willpower, exert our mental capabilities of understanding this path. Prayer and meditation in the morning to get guidance. Operating on principles to stay in alignment. Especially helping other people. It's a simple process to explain. It's a difficult process to do, but not overwhelmingly difficult. And in fact, as we practice it, we get better at it. Imagine that. If you want to ride a bicycle, you get better when you ride it more often. If you want to roller skate, you get better. Yeah, if you violin, piano, gym, singing, writing, if you want to get better, you practice it. Prayer and meditation is like that. Helping other people is like that. Living according to principles is like that. Let's see the assignment there. Assignment 24 would be what I planned for next week. We've looked at step 11, but I want to, now that you have been on the path for a while and are very used to the vocabulary and my style of presenting, it might have a deeper meaning for you as we go back over the instructions from the big book. Pages 85 to 88 are the key. I would also recommend that you read step 11 from the 12 and 12. If you haven't read step 10 from the 12 and 12, or haven't done that in the last year, I really recommend that. It's a brilliant chapter that really captures better commentary on step 10 than actually does step 10 in the book. The book, the big book, gives us the formula, but step 10 talks about its application.
Well, I would like to talk about what we were talking about today and the forgiveness,
Yes.
Being a decision to release.
Yeah.
The person and myself. I just got back. I missed the last 2 weeks. I went to see my mother, whom I haven't seen in about 2.5 years, definitely through the whole COVID thing. And she's 86 and lives in Italy.
Yeah.
And has always lived in Italy. And I've grown up in the States, so it's always back and forth.
Right.
So I went to be of service, to be with her. And boy, right away, the old character defects of mind of criticism and being rigid and judgmental popped up. And through the pandemic, she's gotten even more set in her ways and self-centered and narcissistic. And I was at the turning point. It was the turning point. I can either continue, or I could start the release. And I was going through that before I even went through this document in the Way of Life. And I don't know what to say. The whole thing was so moving because she could not be the mother I ever wanted her to be. Now I see that's the, what did you just say? That word was so unenforceable rules and the childhood fairy tale of what a mother should be, or a grandmother to my son. And she's just not any of those things. And I could either hold in that place again, 58 now, right? Or I could acknowledge the reality that was unfolding right before me. And it was this woman that was who she was, and these were her coping mechanisms. And I could either love her or I could go back and numb out again and again. And so I could not have done that without the work we've been doing. And that's even after doing, years in AA in the program.
Yes.
This class took me to a different place, and I didn't even realize. I didn't go there with an agenda other than to just be there.
Wow. Oh, okay. Wow. So you were processing it while you were there, but you're falling back on sort of the consciousness that has been developed as a result of the workshop.
Absolutely. Because also the damn Enneagram with the type 1, I got more view into, I thought my character defects were, yes, controlling, gossiping, people pleasing. I didn't realize they were so inflexible and rigid.
Yeah. And that's the way you're built. That's not an excuse.
Yeah.
But it is an explanation.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like, oh, this is just who I am. But a better explanation was, oh, this is just who you are. It's just the way you're built, and you can't help it. I mean, you can modify it. You can mature it, of course. You can influence and manage it. That's our job.
And I said, can we sit down and you tell me more about your life? And she sat down. She couldn't do it her own way, but she's a writer, in one of her books. And she read through the whole book with me in her study, telling me stories. And I couldn't have done that, Herb. I couldn't have. I would have just thought, she can't talk to me. She can only read it through her book, but reality.
But look at what you experienced because you weren't rigid.
Right.
You chose to be flexible.
Right.
That was a decision that you made right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it took work. It took a lot of writing and calls to my sponsor and meetings.
But now in retrospect, I have to believe the word healing is very appropriate.
Yeah.
Yours and hers, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not surface. It's not fake. It's genuine.
Yeah, that's the thing. Right. Yep.
Just kind of going through the steps and then really concentrating on step 10. It cracked me open. It was like that, like you talked about, that spiritual awakening that kind of finally happened. And I realized how much of my life I have unenforceable rules. It's the fairy tales that I want life to be, that I wish life could be, that I manipulate situations to be, and they aren't.
No.
And I'm always disappointed, not always, but I get disappointed, even with years and years of, recovery, blah, blah, blah. It was I don't know what happened, but the the light shone in, I guess. And I realized, I've after my daughter died, I tried to have what I thought would be some kind of a better I have a good relationship with my grandchildren. They're grown, but I go back to where they live every summer with the hope, with this idea that we're going to get together and have family dinners and blah, blah, recreate all of these cookouts. I'm lucky if I see them once all summer.
Right. Yeah. They're as they get older too, they get busy.
Yeah, they have their own lives.
Very much so. Yeah.
Which is what you want. So, placing, like you said, getting myself back in alignment and finally recognizing that this is a story that I'm telling myself. It's not reality for me.
Right.
I wish it were, but never before has step 10, in the way that you explained it, kind of brought it all together for me. As I said, the only way I can describe it is I was kind of like cracked open, and I've been teary all day over it. Mm-hmm. It really, it struck some emotions with me. So I just want to thank you for that. And I'm in a step study, and a number of people weren't on last night, and I just strongly suggested that they listen to the recording when it comes out. And I am, because I want to take notes, which I didn't do last night. And what I loved also was in the next part where participants talked about what's happening with them. I could see how it's transforming them. Yeah. Really. Yeah. Every single one of them kind of was a testament and a testimonial to how it had transformed them, and how the story tale, my father's never going to come back, my mother is a narcissist, blah, 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 and getting on with our lives.
Right. Yeah. And that's what happens someplace after step 7, where we begin to really recognize, what they mean reality is that reality is reality. And as what's her name says, it'll come back to me in a minute, but she says, reality is reality, but only 100% of the time. I mean, it's kind of like, yes. I mean, that's a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
To realize that the story here is not reality. No matter what the story is, it's not reality. It's my perception, my memory, my anticipation, my imagination, but it's not objective reality. And in fact, to push it a little further, and you've heard me say this, I believe, and that is, we can't see reality as it is. We can't know reality as it is, because we're always looking through our glasses. So we're always seeing it through the lens of ourselves. And we're always changing it because we're seeing it. Now that's mind-boggling, and it creates that sense of caution and pause. What is it that I'm actually seeing? That's the truth of it. Now, we don't let it get in our way. I mean, if the light is green, we go, and if the light is red, we don't. We can be pretty confident of some of the things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's why I have a sponsor too, to kind of,
Right on the money. That's exactly the role of an accountability partner, whether you call it a sponsor or not, whatever that person is, that is a trusted soulmate of yours. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. To say, hey, this is, that's very nice, but, let's, so thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
One of my favorite poets is a man that lived in the small town that I live in now. And he wrote a poem for his daughter. And toward the end of it, he invites her to lie back in the sea. He says, lie back, the sea will hold you.
Yeah.
And it's all a part of what we're talking about here, that you will float if you quit thrashing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
And
Yeah.
I am a swimmer, and I'm a heck of a good floater. So I think I just need to translate those skills over into the spiritual realm.
Yeah, you know, and of course, we have to challenge all of this kind of conversation, because it's not about becoming passive. It's about knowing how to cooperate with the movement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because, I mean, nobody who's lasted on this call this long has been passive. That's why you're still here. You've been active. You've done some work. You've done some listening. You've done some reading. You've done some writing. And that's continued to keep you connected to what we're doing here. It wasn't a passive feed me, feed me, feed me at all. It was a very much a dialogue proposition.
Yeah, and by saying the lie back, the sea will hold you, it sounded like all you have to do is just lay there and be taken care of, and it isn't a one-sided.
Right.
No, it's been. I don't know when. I have to look back to when we started the fourth step, but it has been a major meat grinder ever emotionally, ever since, and I just keep trying to pick my head up and stick my head up out of the mud.
Yep.
Like, oh God, good stuff. But it's it has been work, and appropriately we sign a waiver when we start. I like that. Anyway,
Exactly.
this was just another little facet of the growth for me.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks.
I had some things come up that I had completely forgotten about. Things in relationships. A woman that I was very close to that used to work for me, and I didn't go to her granddaughter's funeral. And so I have been really thinking a lot about, I'm a codependent, so it's a little hard for me to figure this out. What is harm done? And I just had, in the past 2 days, my daughter, I've had 2 incidences with my daughter where she shut me down. I said something and she shut me down. And I felt it. I didn't have a good relationship with my mom at all. And if I said anything to her, it was going to be, she's not talking to me for 6 months. Like, it was bad.
Wow.
So anyways, this happened and I felt it. I have a good relationship with my daughter. I felt it. And then I had to really think about it. I had to make her wrong. I had to, I processed it for 2 hours. And then I realized, you know what? She was just telling me that she didn't want to talk about that. She can't drink anymore. She's going on a trip. And I said something about the drinking. She didn't want, she's 26. She doesn't have to talk to me about that. And so when she said that after 2 hours of work, I went, you know what? That was just information. That wasn't harm. And it made me realize, when I'd say something to my mom, maybe that wasn't harm. She didn't know how to handle, I don't want to talk about it. And that was really, it felt strangely mature. It took me 2 hours of some pretty intense.
No, wait. Let's reframe this.
Okay.
It only took you 2 hours.
It used to take forever. But
how many days or weeks would it have taken before?
Like a cow, I'd be chewing on it and throwing it up. I'm happy to say I wouldn't take it out on her, but I wouldn't let it go myself.
No. And we get progressively better and progressively more mature. And that's the point that I really wanted you to make, is kind of like, oh, that was really good. It only took 2 hours.
And thank God for the process that we learned in this program, because 2 hours before would have just been more resentment.
Right.
And
Right.
and I was so like when it hit me, oh, this is just because I want to have a mature adult relationship with my daughter.
Right.
And this was just information, one adult to another.
Yeah.
My drinking is off tables to talk about.
Yeah.
And I went, and she's not drinking, but I'm afraid.
Yes.
So I came at her like a mom, and she said, I'm not a kid. I've got it. I went, oh, this is how you do it. This is how it would have been nice if my mom had done it, but she couldn't.
No.
She just couldn't do it. And I don't need to be mad at her anymore for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like I didn't go to this funeral. This was a long time ago. I was maybe 25. 2,000 people went to this funeral, literally. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to go to that thing. I'll be there for her, though. And I was, but it really hurt her.
Oh,
I don't know if that's harm done.
how do you know it hurt her?
She told me.
I see. Yeah.
Where were you?
Yeah. Well, did you tell her?
I said, I didn't know. I did. This was a very close person to me.
And what was her response?
She accepted what I said. She goes,
What
oh, I understand, because I didn't grow up going to funerals.
What's your relationship been with since then?
Well, that was so many years ago. It was somebody that worked for me when I was 25 and now I'm 60. I haven't been in contact with her in several years. Honestly, she might not be alive anymore.
Yeah. Well, be that as it may, I think your instinct was right. It was your decision. Her response to your decision was her problem.
Yeah. She didn't quit talking to me, or it wasn't anything like that.
Doesn't
She was
matter.
disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's her problem.
Was that harm done, though?
No. Well, I don't see it as harm done. No.
I'm so unclear on what harm done is.
Well,
Unless you steal from someone or kill someone. I get that.
well, but you made a decision which had no really bearing on her at that point, really, other than her needs and her expectations. And you don't have to meet people's needs and expectations.
So when my daughter shut me down, said, don't lecture me, that is not harm done. That's just her saying, I don't want you to do that.
Well, that's your insight, and I agree, but it will be wonderful for you at some point to say, oh, by the way, thanks for having such an adult reaction to me as the result of the work I'm doing and your mature reaction. I can see that I can learn from that and have a better response next time.
Oh, that's good. Because I'm in OA. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm in OA. So I know not to do that with food. But I just didn't know not to do. This is new for me.
Yeah. Well, what's new for you? Tell me what the operating principle is.
Okay, what's new for me is this is new for me that my daughter has a problem with alcohol and that she cannot drink. And so like her going on a trip or something, I had this feeling like to remind her. And I don't do a lot of that. I have to say as a mother.
I understood the background, but you didn't answer my question. So what's the operating principle that you learned?
As a result of her telling me not to lecture.
Okay.
Oh, this is an adult. I don't need to remind an adult how to take care of themselves. But I'm
her mother, but I don't need to mother her.
I don't need to mother her, which I've been good. It's the alcohol thing is new for me because I didn't have that. I grew up with it, but it hasn't been in my life in a long time. Yeah. So this one is new, and of course, why would I say that to her?
Well, you named it earlier because of fear.
Yes.
So you made your problem her problem.
Okay. So was that harm done on either one of our parts, or just the communication?
I don't think so. No, your daughter was a duck who let the water run off her back.
Yeah,
so
she did.
I don't see it. But I think you should acknowledge her.
I will.
For her mature behavior, and that it was a learning experience for you.
For me.
She now gets some credit for it, so that strengthens her ability to do it again.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then
Thank
you'll
you so
build that
much.
then you'll build that mature relationship with your daughter.
Oh, Herb, that's what I want. I didn't have it growing up, and this is what I want.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for your discussing it, because it's those little things, right? And there's lots of nuance to it. Yeah, and we learn from other people's experience.
I think it's the nuance part of the harm done that is just, like I say, I'm codependent.
And that's a double bind there. And that's why you need people with experience as a sounding board.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
I just want to thank you so much. Last week at the time, we were discussing how actually you called me out as being a stalker. And I laughed hysterically. And all week I was reflecting on that. And you really, really called me out. And I am so grateful to you. And all week, who wants to think of themselves as being a stalker? I'd rather think of myself as being stalked, as disgusting as that is, but that I'm the stalker, And all week I was thinking, God, what a slap in the face. God, what a slap in the face. And today, as I was driving home, I said, no, it wasn't a slap in the face, because that implies hurt. What it was like standing in an ice cold shower and being woken up. You woke me up.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I thank you for that.
Well, it wasn't my intention. I can't take any credit for it. I actually was being playful, and it was a bit of tongue in cheek, but obviously I hit a nerve.
Yeah, I understood you were being tongue in cheek.
Oh, okay.
I understood that. Nonetheless,
Hear it. Yeah.
Nonetheless, when there's something hurting inside of you, so what inside of me? Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that stalking, led me to something that we have discussed, my romanticizing the past.
Sure. Right.
And how, thank you. And then,
See, that just to make sure that my sense is what happens, nothing happens by mistake, even though I'm playful and I'm saying it tongue in cheek. And I think we have a relationship where you trust me and I respect you. Having said that, grace works in that environment. That's my point. It's like, it doesn't matter what I say. It's not really, in many cases, me who's saying it. It's the Spirit saying it through me in whatever way that you could hear it, and you heard. And I'm very impressed with that it was meaningful to you. So I'm again astounded at the work of the Spirit.
That is amazing. And it was the exact moment.
Yeah.
Spirit knew.
Yeah.
And wow. Another thing that happened yesterday, you said, what was your responsibility in the resentment? You were talking generally. And it just was amazing yesterday for me how I was in the position after all these months of work that I could see the part I had in my resentment towards my mother. So thank you again.
Well, at the same time, it's wonderful that you can see that there was that difficulty that created part of what your mother's response was, and the dynamic there in your defiance as a child and or teenager. But the real issue, I hope you're seeing, the real issue has nothing to do with history. The real issue has to do with today, Friday, yesterday, Thursday. Your having a resentment has nothing to do with your mother. It has everything to do with you generating this negative energy.
Thank you, Herb. I get that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's the insight that gave me the freedom that all I have to do now, all I have to do is to release that right now. And I'm free of the resentment. Well, Bill says you can't do that. For the deep ones, you need prayer. And what I found is, as everybody has heard me talk about, that the prayer practice, along with finishing the balance of the steps in that particular area, but the prayer practice is effective in fact, having me look at my hands, release the resentment.
Right.
Because I'm holding it. I created it and I'm holding it. It's my energy. The whole resentment is coming from me. No place outside of me. The whole resentment is coming from me, my reaction. Right. And all I need to do is release it. But I can't on the deep ones until right. I get involved with prayer and then finally with the amends process.
Right.
Yeah.
My plan is, tomorrow to go to sit by a little lake in the park and pray specifically that prayer that you have in the Word of Life document and work on that and write my amends letter and then, burn it because my mom is no longer with us. She's dead.
Before you burn it, write it and then read it out loud.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, read it out loud as if she's sitting right there with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Herb.
Yeah, thank you.
But I was wondering, should I be looking if I don't think, if I've done my amends before to my brother and sister, who I have very good relationships with, or my brother-in-law maybe, do I go back and do these again and just say if there's anything?
Only if you suspect that there's been some mischief in between the last time and this time. But don't be a pest.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, my brother-in-law is a little sarcastic and, he little digs. So,
well, that's his personality. But, yeah. But the real question is, have you harmed him since the last time you talked to him about amends?
No, I think maybe I might have been inconsiderate.
That's not the question, though. Did you harm?
No, not at all. I've been there for him.
Yeah. And if you have any doubt about a substantial relationship, and I say it that way because I really don't want you to be a pest, and any of you. So if it's a substantial relationship and you have some kind of shadow about, not sure I'm totally clean, ask. Just ask. I'm still on that spiritual path and I'm still trying to be a decent human being. Sometimes I slip off the path. Do we have anything that needs to be cleaned up?
Okay, informal, I like that.
Informal, short, boom. Yep. Make sure it's private, though, private, so that they have an opportunity to say something if, in fact, they want to.
All right, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm very practical this way. Let's not make it a religion. Let's not have a lot of liturgy around it. Yeah.
I'm making my 10th step, my ninth step with my step guide. We're practicing. It's a relationship, a former relationship with my ex and fiance.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a big one. But anyway, I wrote it out and I'll practice it and then I'll make it. And I'm okay about it. You know, we've been the ex and I have been talking, and Forgiveness for Good is an awesome book. It's an easy read too. I'm not a big reader, but it was an easy read. So I recommend it highly. And that helped a lot. And I think what helped the most is saying the resentment prayer forever. Yeah. I think that's really what helped the most. I have no resentment, he helped me. Because of him, I'm becoming the person that God wants me to be because of that incident. And so
you want to talk just a little bit more about that so that we know what you're talking about? Because it sounds pretty interesting.
Okay. So we have a relationship and he tells me he wants me to leave in 24 hours. I was staying with him during COVID. And then that was July. And in January, I was so hurt and I stayed in that pain and I wouldn't forgive until January. What a waste of time. What a waste of my body, my energy, the pain. Anyway, so I contacted him and he had made his amends through an email. And I said I forgave him on paper, but I didn't, obviously. And so in January, we contacted, and he asked me my part. Why did you bug me, nag me for money that I felt he should give me? I was entitled. Don't you know who I am? And what he, brought up for me is, I'm not entitled. I wasn't married to him. And that was my entitlement issues that I've had for a long time. Ask my sister about that one. And so I never thought I harmed him. Of course, I didn't know what was wrong. He never told me what, until January. So we talked about it, and I still don't realize I harmed him. I made a list of all the things I should have done better, and I told him all these things. I thought I was making an 8th step without waiting for you to do it, without talking to my sponsor. And what you told me was all I was trying to do is make myself feel better, which was true. I reread it the other day. So I told him, I said, I have to finish my 9th step with you. And he's he's doing the recovery. He's been doing it for 7 years. It's like, why doesn't he get better? No, why don't I get better? But anyway, I have to tell you, I read that so anyway, I learned who I am and what kind of person I am. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty, but it's okay because I can change and I want to change and I want to do it differently. And, but I'm scared. I'm scared to go out in the world and become this person that I know God wants me to be. And I heard you tonight, and I know it's prayer and it's meditation. It's one day at a time. It's on the with daily reprieve and all those wonderful things. But I have been this way for 66 years, and now I've had this. I've been this way. I'm wired. And you're saying I can change, I can be different, I can be what the 10th step said, I don't know, it scares me. I'm scared, even though my meditation has picked up. I'm much more active and better at doing that. And that's been helpful. And what I learned is I have to learn to love myself. I am very aware God loves me. It's obvious. It's written all over my life, but I don't love me. And I realized I wouldn't even want to be my best friend. So that's a practice I have to take up. And this stuff's not easy.
No.
I want easier, softer way.
Yes. As soon as you find it, let us all know.
I've shared with you before, I have OCD. So sometimes I do not have a good read on trusting my gut. And so I've been working through the resentment prayers, doing about 8 of them, people at a time, and then scratching off people when I feel like it's gone. And I have one that I feel might be gone, but I don't trust myself because I'm afraid it's going to come up. And I think it ties into how you say you can forgive but not forget, and how forgiveness isn't a feeling. My fear is that I'm not being honest with myself if for some reason it crops up again in the future. So I wanted to just get some guidance on that, because my gut says, move on, add another person. This is probably your OCD.
Well, why
in
don't
trying to be
you
perfect.
try that? Why don't you just try that? Wear it loosely, try it. If in fact you experience it down the road, then put it back on the list.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
The next question I have is, in trying to accept reality and navigate the flow and try on my new behaviors with family members, where you have this, you know, I'm 52, you have this history of dysfunctional behavior, and I find it's almost a reflex to act negatively on my part, but I'm really trying to make a conscious effort to watch my reactions. And I was curious, if you have this old behavior and you have somebody in your life that's in an irritable mood, and in the past, they would needle you until you burst. So you can sense that this is what's happening. They're pushing, mistreating, being disrespectful, and then you burst. And in trying one time to kind of share at that moment, to stay calm and say, express my boundaries and say, I'm really trying to behave differently. And selfishly, I wanted to share my boundaries. But then they were like, stop talking. And so I actually did stop talking. But how do you deal with that? Do you just say, later, I'd like to discuss it with you so that you can understand where I'm coming from?
Well,
because I can't change them, but I also don't want to be a doormat. I have a problem with not saying.
Why do they have to know what you think or feel? Well, I mean,
I feel
it
like,
sounds to me like you're setting boundaries for them, and that never works.
Okay. So how do you not be a doormat and not be
walk out.
Crawl.
Walk out.
Okay. What if you have driven with them 20 minutes away? Just hold your tongue and wait till you're done?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you have an Uber account?
Yes. So just leave.
Well, how independent are you? Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean,
no, I mean,
there are options. You don't have to put up with bad behavior. Stop the car. I'm getting out. Thank you. I'm done with this conversation. You do that once, and I'll bet you they'll be more careful next time. If, in fact, you give them a next time. But again, that's your choice.
I appreciate the feedback. Okay.
Yeah, it's about being independent. What's her name? Codependent No More. Melody Beattie. She has a wonderful conversation about independence and interdependence. And then she coins a whole new phrase of undependent, which is the balance of independence and interdependence. And I just love that, you know? So we're independent and we're interdependent, and both are a decision on my free will. Now, it's possible in a communication that I will modify some of my expectations because I have a value proposition of the relationship, so that I hesitate to use the word, but I'll compromise on some of my expectations or desires because I have a higher desire or priority for a relationship of value. And so there's where the discussion and communication come in. But you don't get to set boundaries for other people. You get to set boundaries for yourself. And if they're interested, you could tell them. But he doesn't sound like he's one bit interested in how you feel or think.
Okay.
And you could ask him that question. Are you interested in how I think or feel, or are you interested in my perceptions of your words and your behavior? Are you interested? Would you like some feedback? Because that sets it up to have a dialogue for the possibility that he's unconscious. This is his awkward way of being in a relationship.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Just the truth of what I've seen in my side. See, when I did the steps the first time, I never saw me in it. I just saw him.
Yeah.
I never saw my harm. I saw his harm.
Yeah.
And it took what was a precious relationship and it stained it.
Got it.
Because I found out what I didn't know, right?
Right.
But now, through this work that we've done, I can actually be honest and see the truth, whereas before it was my delusional story.
Yeah, that's it.
And also really a lot of the shock of finding out what I didn't know. And now I can't face him with it because he isn't here, right?
Right.
But when you talked about going to the cemetery and writing a letter, I thought, because our favorite places here are at beaches, I can go to the beach and I can write it there.
Really?
And just thinking about it and anticipating it today brought me a spiritual experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just thinking about what that was going to do when I was able to do that. So
Right.
I just want to thank you so much for your experience in the things that are all of our experiences.
Yes.
You know, we all have people who've already passed,
Yes.
and just anticipating the power of actually writing. Because when I did the steps the first time and I wrote out my amends to him and, you know, went through all of my grudges and that I had, I did it at home. You know, I did it in my apartment that he's never seen. Right. But I didn't go to a place where I could invite him to be there because we have a history there.
Right.
So I just want to thank you. I think that just the anticipation of that.
I'm so glad that you spent the time with the detail that you just did in terms of your thoughts and your reactions and your history and the process that you've gone through, because it modeled, and I mean this, it modeled for lots of other people who don't know how to get started. All right. And so wonderful. And focus, I'm assuming, because I'm hearing it in the tone, not so much in the words maybe, but in the tone, I'm hearing that you're going to focus on the precious part of the 30 years and maybe the disappointment, but the most is going to be on, you had 30 years and a lot of it was really good.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
But to have that connection, Herb, that I haven't had in 7 years.
Yeah.
That's the hope that you gave me.
Nice. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Forgiveness is a process, not a event. And this thing, you know, I was always told we forgive and forget. That's one of those things that was like hardwired into my mind growing up. You forgive and you forget.
Right.
Here you say forgiveness is not to condone, forget, tolerate, ignore, approve, excuse, minimize, none of those things.
Right.
And I just found it refreshing to read this and to know this.
Yes.
Something happened today. Now, when we were on the fourth step, I did my column 3 and column 4 here with you guys about my father. I don't know if you remembered it or not, but he, you know, I just had a bad experience with him. And one of the words that what you said was that he showed you who he was.
Yes.
You also asked me, did I know anyone else like that? And I told you my half sister, who I did not grow up with. And, you know, in doing my fourth step, I saw various relationships that I've had with family members, cousins who I have wanted to fulfill this role as a sister. Okay. My expectations of them was to have this sisterly type relationship with them because I didn't have that with my own sister.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I found out in doing this work. But I had not identified my sister as someone that I had a resentment with or someone that I was angry with until you asked me the question. about, was there anyone else like that? And I thought about her, and I thought about how when I wanted to have a relationship with her, she was not receptive. Okay, she rejected the relationship, didn't return my calls, didn't return, the love I was extending to her. She texted me today. And in the text, she said something like, I'd like to get together and spend some time. Do you have any availability? And my thoughts were, my thoughts were just like, I can do that. I didn't have any resentment connected with it. I didn't have this thing about, oh, now you want to be my sister? No, those kind of thoughts didn't come to me. I didn't feel that way. And I'm not saying by any means that I have forgiven her or my father, but I think that I'm in the process. I can feel the transforming happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I feel it happening because I'm not reacting the same and I'm open. And that's what my infomercial is. That This is a process. It is transforming. And you said early on, very early on in this workshop, you said that the effort that we put in, we will get so much more out of what we put into this, than what we'll get. You know what I'm saying? You said, like, yeah, you will get more out of what we put in. All we have to do is be willing and try, and we'll get so much more out of it. And I'm finding that to be true. Yeah. I'm finding that to be true. And, with my reaction to getting that from her, I'm not ready to do the 9 steps yet. I actually have an appointment with my sponsor to do my 4th step. Good. But I've been steadily doing the other work along the way. Right. So I feel really good about, that, setting that date with her and just doing the next thing, so that I can get better and move through this process, because I didn't know that I was still in so much pain. Yeah. I didn't know how deep rooted some of my issues were and the pain that I was carrying around. And you said, so many things today. The point of forgiveness is to release the person, and once I release that person, it's something about this, I have to forgive myself in order to be able to forgive others, and I'm seeing so much of the thing, not necessarily talking about my father per se, but in some regards, I can see myself in him as I relate or have related to my son, and what I would like to be forgiven. I would not like to, for him to walk around holding grudges and resentments against me as I have with my father. So this whole process that we're going through is making me want to change. It's making me want to be willing to do the work to change. Yeah. And the final thing I want to say is, you talked about the 10th step in the 12 and 12 and in the big book. And when I was going through the 12 and 12, I read this stuff, that 10th step a lot, in the 12 and 12, but I actually went through and highlighted, and saw how you're right. It does give you the application, doing the spot check inventory, doing the inventory at night, doing the thing where you go with your sponsor and do it maybe annually or something like that. But you mentioned in the big book, one of my favorite sayings, and it talks about it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. And I think I've been doing that for a number of years until I came to this workshop and saw that. It's almost like when you don't know, you don't know. That's it. Kind of like walking around with blinders on, thinking I was okay, but I really was like delusional. Is that the word we use? I was really delusional. And then it says that we're headed for trouble if we do. It's like it's a warning there that if we don't practice this spiritual way of life, that we're headed for trouble, and that all we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual conditioning. And that's what's happening with me. I feel like I'm being conditioned, and I've been like reinvigorated
Yes.
going through this workshop. So this has been a good experience for me.
Yeah.
I'm not scared. That's kind of like a biggie for me. I'm not afraid to go through this and do what's required to get better, because I've been so afraid to face the things about whatever I thought was inside of me, whatever I thought was wrong. I don't know what I thought, but I was really afraid, and I'm not afraid.
Right.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it's a wonderful testimony to the power of the process. Yeah, Bill lays it out, and it takes a while for us to really understand his words. Yep. No, that's right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's pray that serenity prayer, which is exactly what we're talking about. Navigating reality. What can I influence? What can't I influence? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.